Kia ora koutou, tēnei te mihi nui ki a koutou. Daja wanchang hao, and good afternoon. And congratulations to those of you that have met the endurance test of lasting from 7 o'clock this morning when I was here and have been here for the full day. And I hope you've found those proceedings particularly useful. Can I just acknowledge, I'm not going to acknowledge anybody much apart from Fran O'Sullivan and Michael Barnett for co-chairing this meeting and putting their effort into it. It's a huge effort, and a big thank you to both of you for what's been achieved. To Pam Ford, thank you very much for your kind comments. And I think that the day has been a success. It started off as a success to have a Prime Minister, a Trade Minister, two former Prime Ministers, and leading business people from around the city, and an audience of the size and calibre that you attracted today. What I want to look at today, just to wind things up really, is trade with China, where it's going, how we deal with the problem of COVID, and of course I need to comment as well on the geopolitical environment, how we choose between, or do we need to choose between, our largest trading partner and our more traditional political allies, and I don't believe we need to choose between those two groups. Next year is an important year. It's the 50th anniversary of the opening of diplomatic relations with China. And when Norman Kirk, as the then Prime Minister, made one of his first acts in office, the opening up of those diplomatic relationships in 1972, our trade with China was negligible. It was almost nil, and China was a very different country. It was a country that had suffered from decades of external conflict and internal conflict, and a country that was held back, I believe, by adherence to a command economy rather than a market economy. The change between 1972, when we opened up that relationship, and 2005, when we began negotiations for a free trade agreement with China, was immense. I can't think of a parallel in history where a nation was able to achieve more than 10% growth on average for a period of decades. And that owes something to the size of China. It owes something to the skill and the entrepreneurial nature of its people. And it owes a lot to Deng Xiaoping, who moved China towards a more market economy. So that when I signed the Free Trade Agreement in the Great Hall of the People in April 2008, our trade had increased from almost nothing to two-way trade of $8 billion. And at the time that I signed that, there was a bipartisanship between National and Labour to support it, but there was also a heck of a lot of opposition. And people said to me quite frequently in New Zealand, "You're mad. You're going to enter into a free trade agreement with China. China, 1.2, 1.3 billion people, and this small country of 4 million will be absolutely overwhelmed." But ironically, the concern was not just on our side of the table. I remember going into one of the first negotiations with Bo Xilai, who was then the Commerce Minister, and he began by saying, "Minister, we are very worried about your powerful dairy industry." And I naturally laughed, and he said, well, through his interpreter, "What are you laughing about?" And I said, "Minister, we're a country of just 4 million people, and you're a country of 1.3 billion, and you're worried about us." But contrary to what the critics said, that trading agreement has been a huge boon for our country. Our two-way trade has quadrupled to $33 billion. And what's more, the balance of the trade actually moved from being in China's favour to New Zealand's favour, with our exports, I think, last year being about $16.6 billion. The export market of China is our largest export market, and China is also our second biggest source of imports. The effect of COVID on that trade has been relatively small. I think last year our exports dropped by 100 million or 0.6%. And if you ask me where it's going to, I believe that our trade will continue to expand strongly with China. China was the one country of the top 20 international economies that continued to grow last year. And depending on whether you follow the Chinese government's predictions of a more than 6% growth or the IMF's predictions of an 8% growth in China in the coming year, China will be an expanding market. Now, I know you've had some discussion here today to say, is it good to have so many of our eggs in one basket? Well, I think China's about 20% of our exports. We did have all our eggs in one basket when we were trading with the United Kingdom in the 1940s. It was about 90% of our exports. Obviously, it's good to diversify and it's good to find new markets, and any government should be doing that. But the truth is that you as business people will trade in the markets that you find most profitable, and at the current time, China is one of the most profitable markets for our exports. I don't think any government is going to try to change that or can change that, but should we diversify, of course, we should be trying to open up new trading agreements right around the world. I said that COVID hadn't had much impact on on trade and goods, but it has had a dramatically bad impact on tourism. 400,000 Chinese tourists coming here in 2019 dropped to zero by March 2020. Last year we had 60,000 students here in Auckland, the majority of which were from China, but not all. That was worth $2.78 billion to us, and that's dropped to 20,000 students. Can we turn that around? I heard the Prime Minister's answer. She was cautious. But I believe, firstly, with international students, it should be possible to safely bring those students back, even with a period of quarantine, particularly as we become vaccinated and as we improve our border procedures. And with China, a country that has got on top of the expansion of community transmission of COVID and has it under control. Tourism is a bigger challenge, but I think that after Australia and after our Pacific neighbours, China needs to be one of the first countries that we look at when we look at expanding our travel bubble more broadly. I want to finish by talking about the debate that's occurred with our relationship with China and whether that's contradictory to our relationship with Western democratic allies. And I don't believe that it is. The issue has arisen because the Five Eyes partnership, in terms of sharing security information and intelligence, wasn't built on that organisation being an organisation that made political statements and required of its membership a commonality in political stance. It was intelligence sharing, and it's benefited each of those partners. When I was a minister in the Longi government, of course, the relationship with the United States broke down. There was a cessation of almost all relations, but the intelligence sharing relationship continued. I don't believe that that relationship is under threat today. In addition, New Zealand, under alternative Labour and national governments, has moved towards being more forthright about New Zealand being an independent country that can speak its own mind freely and frankly. We are no longer beholden to the United Kingdom as we once were, or to the United States as we once were, in terms of what are the parameters of our foreign policy. We are proudly independent, and we should make the comments in our own way and according to our values and our principles. And there will be a time when we disagree strongly with China. We are a democratic country. We're a country absolutely committed to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And therefore, on those issues, mostly we will side with Western and democratic countries. We will claim the right to speak our mind if we want to be critical of something that China does or something that any other country does. That's our right as a nation. But I learnt as a foreign minister that being loud and exhibitionist does not always mean that you have the most impact on the people that you're negotiating with, particularly when we're a small nation and the people that we're negotiating with very often are superpowers. So we choose the way in which we can say to countries, including China, we don't believe that what you're doing here is right, and this is why we hold that belief firmly, sincerely, and very strongly. And that will apply to the situation facing the Uyghur people in Xinjiang. It will apply probably in the South China Seas, and it will apply in regard to the restriction on rights of people in Hong Kong under the Basic Law. But our relationship with China is not premised on us agreeing on everything. It's premised on a friendship that was based on good faith in our negotiation of a trade agreement and was premised on the fact that both of our countries benefited from having a strong mutual relationship. I believe that that relationship can withstand differences of opinion strongly but appropriately addressed one to the other. I don't think that this will be something that jeopardises our relationship or our trading relationship with China. And I do have to say to people often of extremist and populist views like Nigel Farage, we will not be told by people like that about how New Zealand should stand up for its values and its beliefs. We've shown our ability to do that over numerous conflicts in the last century, and we have sacrificed the life of our people to stand up for what we believe in. So I make no apology for the stance that we take on this today. Finally, the relationship is not defined by the differences that we have with China, but rather by the commonality. We face together challenges like climate change, like removing barriers to trade and prosperity, and pandemics. And there is a high level of commonality between our two countries and other countries. And for this world to move forward, we need people to put aside their differences and work on the things that are important to common humanity, and I believe that we will do that. So thank you very much. I'm sorry to have taken up your time at the end of a long day. I hope that the proceedings today have been valuable to you. Thank you for participating. Thank you for being part of that. It's a real pleasure to be here and to talk with you tonight. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Thank you very much.